So I am, as you can see here, I'm Summerlee. I'm going to be hosting today. We are going to be taking questions throughout the webinar. So there's a Q&A box at the bottom. If you could just, as we go through and we hear from all of our different panelists, if you could pop your questions in the Q&A box. It's not visible to other attendees or participants. It's only visible to us as panelists. And if you could include the name of the panelist that it's directed at. And then when we come to the end of the webinar, we've got a Q&A section and we've got some time put aside to get through your questions. If there aren't, if there's some questions that we can't quite get to today, we will answer them and we'll follow it up with an email. And yeah, we'll do our best to get those answered and get your answers out to you. There's also going to be an FAQ sheet. Yeah, which will be sent out. So if there's other useful pieces of information or tips that we think that you guys should know, we'll include that there as well. So I can see there's still a couple of more people joining. So just to recap the first couple of important points, all attendees' cameras and microphones are switched off. So we're not able to hear you, but if you do have any questions, please just pop them in the Q&A box at the bottom and we'll get round to them at the end. Okay. Okay. So for anyone that may not be familiar with 68 People, we're a highly connected recruitment and training consultancy. And we're on a mission to create the biggest hospitality network on the planet and use that as a force for good, for the betterment of the industry that we're also obsessed with. We're all hospitality lifers, ex-operators ourselves, and yeah, we're really committed to innovating and elevating the industry. So a little bit less about us and more about what we're all here to talk about today, what we all want to know, which is the changes that are coming up in April, this April next month. So we're going to hear from a number of different speakers, and we'll be debunking some myths around international recruitment. So first of all on the panel, we've got our very own Kath Powell. Scouser.
Hey!
Kath is the head of 68 International, which is our international division for 68 People. We've also got in the house Emma Brooksbank.
Hi there.
From Freeths, and she's going to be talking us through all of the legal side of things. And then last but definitely not least, we've got Chuckwity, aka Chucks.
Hello.
A very talented pastry chef from Australasia. So we're going to hear from everyone one by one. And as I said, for anyone that's just joined, if there's any questions, we will get round to them. If you can just pop them in the Q&A box at the bottom with the name of the panelist that's directed at, and we'll get them answered at the end. So first of all, Kath is going to be sharing an understanding of the abilities and the skills that we've seen in our international candidates and what kind of positive impacts that's had and international recruitment has had on the operators that she's been working with. So I'm going to hand over to Kath, and she can talk a little bit about 68 International, how it was born.
Thank you so much, Summer. Hi, everyone. Lovely to meet you all or see you all on the webinar. So for those who obviously haven't seen or met me before, as Summer mentioned, I'm head of international at 68 People. I joined the business not too long ago, but long enough, it seems, after working as an operator and really loving an international chef project. 68 International was born back in 2021, coming out the back end of COVID. And it was born from an idea from our managing director, Charlotte Kemp, who went to one of our owners, Abby, co-founder, and basically said, how do you fancy getting into the world of international recruitment? And Abby thought CK was pretty mental at the time, but actually CK did what she did and she decided to pilot the scheme. So the pilot went successfully well. There was 3 operators involved in that, and that was a small, medium and large business, and the success was phenomenal. So based on that, the project then continued to grow. And I, quite soon after, joined 68 International. Now, after 3 years, I think it is, the division has deployed about 150 chefs and some managers from across the globe. So we've seen a variety of chefs coming in from chef de partie level. We've seen operations head chefs, we've seen senior levels, specialisms, sushi chefs, Chuck's, wherever he is one of our amazing pastry chefs. So we've worked with all kinds of different specialisms. Not just that, we've also worked with restaurant managers and bar managers. So these were also roles that we're seeing some quite significant issues in terms of retention. And so it was really, really key for us to try and help support some of our clients and our businesses. So why do we love this project so much? I think it's because we are different. The main thing for us is that we absolutely love to support the businesses that we work with, help them resolving their key problems. Coming out of COVID, there was a huge issue with retention, and not just retention, but the number of people that were working back of house specifically. We saw that the businesses were struggling to open 7 days per week. We were seeing that they weren't able to meet the guest demands, and that was just really, really heartbreaking for us as a business. And we just desperately wanted to get out and try and help these businesses be able to get back to the pre-COVID heyday, shall we say. So what have we been doing? Well, we've been changing lives and changing lives for operators as well. So we've not just been changing lives for our international candidates that we've helped support bring across to the UK. We've also been really seen really positive results from the businesses that we've placed chefs with. One of the main things that we've seen is that we've seen that candidates coming from across the globe can thrive, whether it be in a rural area or they can thrive in a city living. So you'll probably hear a little bit about that from Chuck. So he'll kind of tell you a little bit about some of the things that he found when he arrived here in the UK. But one of the key drivers were that we wanted to help those rural businesses that were becoming more and more challenging to operate. And we wanted to really make sure that we were able to give them the standard of chef that their businesses needed. We have a really amazing example of a business that we supported and we worked with, and we helped place a head chef, a sous chef, and we also placed a line chef and a manager with, and they were really struggling. I'll not mention the business, but they couldn't have been more rural if they tried, is one thing I will say to you. And they were struggling to even be able to take bookings for the hotel accommodation, the small rooms. They couldn't even offer breakfast or lunch, so they were having to send guests down to a local pub because they didn't have the team members. So what we saw from that was we straight away supported these guys, and we put chefs in to kind of really make sure that they could drive their summer period last year. That went amazingly well. Front of house has been superb. And what we've seen from that is that they've now received an award. So they are in the Michelin Guide, and they are received a green star for their work on sustainability. So this would never have been possible for this business over 12 months, 18 months ago, when they simply couldn't operate day to day without the chefs. So this is just one example of how we, can help businesses and what we have done historically. So kind of want to touch on what everybody is really here and really interested to know is, since the skilled worker visa changed in 2021, we hadn't had a huge amount of announcements on it, but we did see a little bit of a change in salary April last year. Then obviously in December, we got the crazy news about the skilled worker and the new salary going up to 38,700. which was a massive shock. And obviously Emma's going to go through the new legislation and go into more detail, and hopefully she's going to be able to answer any questions that you do have on that. But some of the things that we've been working on and some of the things that we've been looking at in the background is what other ways can we try and continue to bring this amazing talent into the UK, but without having to distort pay scales in businesses by paying a chef de partie 38,700 or a manager an assistant manager 38,700 when maybe a current domestic British national or somebody living here in the UK full time is maybe on a lesser salary. So one of the things that 68 International has been looking at in the last few months specifically is things like the youth mobility scheme. And it's an absolutely great scheme for some businesses that might want to work with candidates coming from the likes of Australia, Canada. And they allow, very similar if you're familiar with this, the old school working visa going to Australia, it's very similar coming back the other way. This is something that we're just delving into, and I was approached by a number of candidates, phenomenal candidates, an amazing bartender who's wine trained up to the hilt, just crazy what knowledge he had, and he's desperate to come to the UK, but his biggest concern was he didn't want to land into the UK as a traveller and be trying to find a job. So what we did is we've had an exchange, talk through some of the different options for him, and he absolutely fell in love with the youth mobility scheme. So that allows us to place a candidate here in the UK that's looking to do some travel, and basically we can help support businesses as well. The good thing about youth mobility scheme is a majority of those candidates that would be eligible, they are able to come, they are all English speaking or majority English speaking countries. So that also helps if anybody's got any fears around language or those kind of barriers. The other thing that we've been kind of looking at, and hopefully Emma might touch on this, or she might be able to give us a little bit, I don't mean to put her on the spot, is the under 26 new entrants. So even with the new changes, there is going to be a deduction in terms of for those candidates that are actually under the age of 26. So I think Emma will confirm that, or I will confirm it at the end or on the FAQ. Thanks, Emma. But I think that is going to be subject to a 20% deduction. So again, that is something that we will put a little bit more information around in our frequently asked questions sheet, and is absolutely another avenue for businesses that perhaps still want to pursue the international recruitment, but really don't necessarily think that their business can sustain a £38,700 a year salary for a line chef, a CDP, or a kind of mid-level chef, shall we say. So there are a couple of things that we have been looking at, and some of the things that kind of we are going to be working on in the future to help continue to support our businesses with the problems. We still are seeing, even now post-COVID, we're seeing huge retention issues, back of house, and even front of house in those more junior levels. So one of the things that we try to do is try to look at different ways in which we can help support all these amazing candidates coming across to the UK, but also keep it as a cost-effective option for businesses. Some of the other things that we have been doing rapidly and working on really quickly is trying to help as many of our clients get through visa lodgings for any candidates that they have got in process at the moment. So we've been working quite heavily with clients to really push forward to try and make sure that we've got some candidates coming through on the route at the moment for the skilled worker. And then obviously we will be able to look and adopt to changes going forward when the change kicks in on the 4th of April. Also, we've been working with some new businesses, doing some new licence applications, which has been really great and exciting, some amazing fun concepts that we've been working with. So it's great from our perspective to see that even though that the government has come out with this new legislation, it's actually not really putting businesses off still pursuing this kind of avenue. And especially when we are looking at some of the national minimum wage increases and current salaries for the various different hospitality levels up and through to senior. actually the 38,700 threshold it is not going to be a concern for those more senior roles, of which, you know, we are still working on and with. So yeah, so I think that is pretty much about kind of me and where we're up to. I don't want to steal Emma's thunder. I know that Emma is the one that you're all here to see. So I am going to hand back to Summer. And if you have any questions specifically around sponsor licenses or anything to do with visa lodging, please just, you know, just don't feel free to reach out, whether it be LinkedIn or direct. Thanks.
Fab, thank you very much, Kath. It was great to hear that story, and there's actually parts of that even I wasn't aware of, so it was really nice, really great to hear. Sounds like quite the journey the 68 International's been on. As Kath said, we're going to hand over to Emma, and Emma's going to talk us through the legal side of the changes that we're seeing. So I'm going to hand straight over. I don't want to eat into your time because, like Kath said, this is why we're all here. So over to you, Emma.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Summer, and thanks, Kath. I'm going to share some slides. Hopefully they'll come through. See. Okay. Hopefully you can see those. Yeah, fantastic. So we knew that these changes were coming. We've known since December, but the legislation only landed yesterday. So I've spent an enjoyable afternoon, evening, early morning digesting the 200 plus pages, and I'm hoping that I'll be able to condense this right down and explain it as clearly as I possibly can. But I have to say that some of it is a little bit complicated. Right, so we're going to dive straight in. We are when my slides move on. Okay, can you now see a slide that is headed up, what are the key changes? Yeah, fantastic. Thanks, Summer. Okay, so the way to think about this is to recognise that we will have people with skilled worker visas right now, or people moving into the skilled worker category right now, up until the rules change, and the changes are coming in on the 4th of April. And so people who are making visa applications up to the 3rd of April, and those people will fall under the existing rules. So these changes are not coming into place for those people. So an application made now is under what will become the old rules. So we've got that category of people. Then we've got people who have a skilled worker visa, so they're already in the route when the changes take place, but they need to do something after the 4th of April. So they need to extend their visa, they need to switch to a new employer, or they need to apply for indefinite leave to remain. Those people were under the old rules, but there's a new set of rules for them. So they're the old new people. We had the old people, we've got the old new people. And then we're going to have people that are completely new into this category. So they don't have a skilled worker visa. They'll be applying after the 4th of April, so after the rules come in, and they have a new set of rules. So they're the new people. So it's really, we have to kind of think of it in those three different categories. Okay, so your old people, existing rules apply. That's it. Okay, now we're thinking about our other two categories. What are these new rules and what do they mean? Okay, it's all about salary. There was lots of rules introduced, but the ones we're worried about and thinking about are salary. When it comes to salary, we always think about the general threshold, which used to be called baseline, and baseline was actually a better way to describe it. So that's the kind of minimum that applies across the board to all skilled worker visas. And then we have the going rate, and the going rate is defined by the Home Office for every different role that we have, and there's changes to both of those. Okay, so let's think about our old new people first of all. So existing skilled workers, they need to extend, they need to switch employer, they need to apply for indefinite leave to remain. Their general salary threshold is going to increase when they make that change. If it's after the 4th of April, the general salary threshold will increase to 29,000. Okay. I'm going to go through all of the existing first of all, just to make it easy to follow. Okay. If they are applying to extend or they're switching employer, there's also a change to their going rate. Now, at the moment, going rates are set at the 25th percentile of average salaries, so a quarter of average salaries, as it were, and they'll still be set at that 25th percentile, but all of the salary rates are going to be brought up to date. So there will be a smallish increase across the board to all salary rates. Okay, so that's just an updating of those salary rates. And also we have an increase in the minimum hourly rate that's going to apply, and that will go up for those existing skilled worker visas to £11.90. So just to summarise, our existing skilled worker visas, visa holders, when they extend, so not straight away, so you don't need to do anything with them straight away. If they're extending their visa, if they're switching to you as a new employee, or if they're applying for indefinite leave to remain, it's 29,000. It's the current, the new going rates, which will be slightly higher than the existing going rates at the 25th percentile of new rates, and the minimum hourly rate will be £11.90. Okay. Then, importantly, we have our new people, never had a skilled worker visa, applying after the 4th of April, and this is where the significant increases come in. They're going to be looking at a 38,700 general threshold, that baseline level. Their going rate, so the rate defined by the Home Office, will also increase because it will be set not at the 25th percentile of average salary, but all going rates across the board will go up to the 50th percentile for new people coming into the route. Okay, and there'll be a minimum hourly threshold which will be set at £15.88. So that applies to anybody new into this category. Okay, so that was the complicated bit. Now I'm going to look at deductions as Kath mentioned, and then some of what I'll be looking at is just applying this in practice and then consolidating it, just so hopefully so that it all makes sense by the time we've finished. Okay, so we did have existing ways of reducing these thresholds. They still exist, but the reduction will be on the new higher rate. Some of them might not apply. The one that will probably apply is this new entrant reduction or deduction, and that applies where somebody's under the age of 26 when they're applying, or if they're switching from a student or a graduate visa into skilled worker. And importantly, that deduction applies both to our going rate and to our general threshold, our baseline. So our going rate reduces down to 70% of the going rate, and the baseline for our existing skilled worker visa holders who are under the age of 26 is that lower rate, 23,200, and for our new skilled workers is 30,960, which, as Kath said, represents 20% deduction on the full general threshold, the baseline of 38,700. Okay. If you take anything away from that bit, it's just that it is possible to apply reductions or deductions so that we're not having to worry always about a 38,700 salary rate. So what does this look like in practice? So thinking first of all about our existing skilled workers at the point of an extension or a switch or indefinite leave to remain, they are going to be having to meet the general salary threshold of 29,000 unless they've got some kind of tradable points of deduction that can apply. They've got that minimum hourly rate of £11.90, and then they've got to apply the going rate for the role. Now, this is where it gets slightly confusing, and I was completely befuddled by this last night, but then I woke up this morning and had a bit of an epiphany, and it all made sense. when we actually look at the categories, so I've just popped some examples in there for a chef and for a restaurant manager, where we've got these different columns. These are the standard going rate and then the various different deductions. But you'll see, hang on a minute, Emma, you're talking about deductions, but there's nothing deducted there. They're all the same rate. And the reason for that is that chefs, as an example, the going rate falls under the minimum hourly rate. So the Home Office here is applying the minimum hourly rate, because we've always got to apply the highest of these different thresholds. Now, if you think that's just really confusing, don't worry, because this is all set out in the rules and in the guidance. And so, you know, when you're thinking about going through this process, you can get into it and check it and just make sure, you know, none of all this is publicly available. But this just gives you an indication of what you'd be looking at in terms of a salary rate for an existing skilled worker who was looking to switch or extend. I'm going to do the same now for a new skilled worker, so somebody who's never been in the category before and who's looking to switch into the category. So, you know, we talked about this general threshold of 38,700. That would apply to them because they're the new category of visa holders. But we might be able to get this reduction, for instance, if they're a new entrant, but then we've got to apply a 1588 minimum hourly rate as part of the going rate calculation. And then we've got to look at what the going rate is as defined by the Home Office. And again, here you'll see that the going rate defined by the Home Office is lower than the hourly rate. So the Home Office is then applying an hourly rate calculation, and they're coming up with 30,960 as your minimum there. It's just worth remembering, though, that with these different measures that we have to apply to salary, we always have to apply all of the measures and then say to ourselves, okay, which one is highest? That's what we're going to have to pay. We have to pay the highest. So here in this example, if we can't apply tradable points and get a discount on the general threshold, then the general threshold does stay up at 38,700. So even though we might have a going rate that's coming in at 30,960, the general threshold might still mean that we need to be paying 38,700. And that's why it becomes really important to start to look for whether we can apply those tradable points and whether we're looking at new entrants potentially. Okay, don't worry that there's loads of information on here, because this is actually really straightforward. I just thought it was worth clarifying exactly what we mean, or what the Home Office means by salary. So salary is just basic, and it's really frustrating because I know that in this industry, people rely on their tips, and often the tips look and feel very much like a guaranteed salary. It's there, it's within the contract. But if there's any kind of discretionary nature to the salary, then it can't be included. So anything that can go into basic gross should, if we're needing it to meet a salary threshold. So importantly, when are they being implemented? When's all this coming in? I've mentioned the date a couple of times, 4th of April, but the tiniest little glimmer of good news that came out of the changes yesterday, and it is only tiny, I'm afraid, so don't get too excited about it, but we had thought that we would need to get everybody's visa application in before the changes if we were worried about salary. So we thought we were just going to have an absolutely crazy couple of weeks, which we will have an absolutely crazy couple of weeks, but we thought it's going to be all about visa applications, and it turns out that it's not. Well, all we need to do is to assign the certificates of sponsorship before the 4th of April. So as long as we've got a certificate assigned, then the rules in place at the time, which is the old categories, they're the rules that will apply. Now, bear in mind that certificates are only valid for 3 months, but at least we've got 3 months to play with. So we've got an example at the moment. A poor guy is looking to switch from graduate to skilled worker, and he's had an accident. He's in hospital. He needs to do an English language test and he can't get to a test centre to do the test. Now, we were thinking this is going to be really challenging, actually, but as it turns out, we can assign that certificate. He can get better, he can do his English language test, he'll be able to do all of that in 3 months, and then we'll be able to submit his visa application under the old rules. So it just gives us the tiniest little bit of breathing space. Okay, this is the last one, and this is really just intended to kind of consolidate some of the things that I've already talked about, because I know that it's just a lot of information to take in all at once. So we're just thinking, right, who do these changes apply to? Who, you know, we've talked about different categories of people and different times and what have you. So if we have somebody that's applying for their first skilled worker visa, or if they're in a different visa category and they're switching into this category, then hopefully you'll be thinking, well, I know what this is. This is the 38,700. So that's the general threshold, 38,700 for new people after the 4th of April, unless the tradable points apply, and we can get that down. Going rate for our new people is going to go up across all occupation classification codes, and it will go up to the 50th percentile, but we can check those levels now because they were all published yesterday, so we can have an idea of what they are. And the hourly rate is increasing for our new people to 15.88. And then I think hopefully you'll be familiar as well, and you'll be sort of shouting at the screen and know what I'm about to say in terms of our visa extensions, our switching employer people, and our indefinite leave to remain people. Their general rate is also increasing, but only to 29,000. Their going rate is also increasing, but only to the new updated 25th percentile rates, which again have all been published, so we can see what they are. And the hourly rate is going up to 11.90. So it was a lot to absorb, and I hope that I've made it clear, and I'm here till the end to answer any questions that you might have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Emma. That's fantastic. Quick question from a general question. What do you think is going to be the biggest impact of the changes that we're seeing?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a real challenge for industries which just simply can't meet some of these thresholds. And, you know, where Kath at the beginning was talking about really starting to think creatively about how we can still meet labour shortages, but perhaps not always look to skilled worker, look to other routes and more innovative, more creative ways of meeting those labour shortages. You know, I think it's going to be a real challenge, and it certainly will be for restaurant and hospitality, and there's other sectors that I can think of straight away where it just simply isn't viable for lots of these vital skilled roles to have salaries pushed right up to the rates that the Home Office is looking at.
Okay, fantastic. We are getting a couple of questions through, which I think we anticipated, especially on this section. For anyone that might have missed the couple of minutes in the introduction, we're going to visit all of the questions in the Q&A box at the end of the webinar. So we're not overlooking your questions. We will get to them. If there's any that we don't have time to answer in this webinar, we will follow it up with a fact sheet to answer everyone's questions in an email. So last but definitely not least, and a big thank you to Chucks for joining us, because I've just found out it's his birthday today. So thank you for taking the time to share your story with us, Chucks. Yeah, I'd really love to hear about your journey, you know, the process and what you've experienced since starting your role.
Yeah. Hello everyone. Happy birthday to me. My name is Chuks. I'm originally from Nigeria. I'm a pastry chef for about 12 years now. Being a pastry chef is one of the best things that happened to me. I'm really happy about my job and everything. I'm a very detailed person. I'm a very intentional person. I love to do things to the maximum. You know, when I found when I found out that, oh, I'm chef, I was like, okay, then I should do it to the best of my abilities, you know, to get the best out of it. Pastry. There's a lot of things about the pastry world. You know, there's the pastry is a very big, it's a very big thing all over the world. You know, there's specifications about it. From the line I come from, because back home in Nigeria, pastry is not really appreciated. Because you know, outside the world is where people practice pastry more. You know, you get to see advanced pastry. You get to see like pastry working with science, and you're like, wow, I didn't know that pastry could work in a scientific way, you know. And it's only until I've like moved out and then I found out, okay, wow, this pastry is bigger than we thought. Pastry is like larger. Part of the reason why I chose pastry as per specifications because particularly there's a story behind it. There was this particular Turkish chef. So one time I was working in a restaurant as a steward. I was working in a restaurant. There was this particular chef. I saw lots of chefs. There were lots of chefs moving around, but there was this one Turkish chef. The way he dressed, the way he looked, the way he appeared, the respect I was giving to him. And I was like, is this not part of the kitchen chef or does it come from somewhere? I was like, no, that's the pastry chef. I was like, pastry chef? I've never heard of a pastry chef. I just know a chef. And they were like, I just admired him and I just like looked like, wow, I really like to be like this. I really like to for people to see me with this you know, with this in this way, in this light. And that was how I met him. And I like, chef, I really aspire to be like you. I really like the way you carry yourself and all. Like, I would love to be, you know, I would love to do what you're doing. Actually, I didn't intentionally went for like the pastry thing. I just wanted to just be like him, and it was like, okay, what's gonna happen is that okay, he's gonna talk to the manager about it, and I should join him in the kitchen. And they talked to me, and they talked about it, and they were like, "Are you interested to join?" I'm like, "I'm very interested," and that was how 12 years now. It's been 12 years, and the journey started. I said I joined pastry back home in my country before I moved to Dubai. I worked in Dubai for about 2 years. It was actually the company that I worked with, Hilton back home in Nigeria, that I worked with, that transferred me. There was like a competition for chefs because they were going to open like new branches. So what Hilton does is that when they're going to open like new branches from all over the world, they select staffs from all over the world to like create like a new place, because that's like the best, that's their own way of doing their recruitment. And there was this exam that was given. Out of 25 of us in back in Nigeria, I was the only person selected. And that was how I got the job. And that was how I got the job, and I moved over to Dubai. I worked in Dubai for about 2 years. And one good thing about working in a very big structure is that there's a lot of organizational structure. There's like the chain is too much. The chain is too much, you know, and you don't really have you don't really get enough space to be creative. So as much as you learn, you just have only the space to learn and learn and learn. You know, because one of the good part of it also is that they brought like lots of international chefs from France. There were lots of brands that were coming in, people like Bourgogne. Bourgogne is like a puree brand. They do all this puree they use in making all these sweet pastries, all these classic pastries. There was like Molivion, like they specialize in flour. They have like a whole farm in France where they produce different kinds of flours, you know, sourdough. The sourdough is about almost 25, 30 years sourdough. So that's like the peak, you know. So that was one of the good things about working in bigger organizations that have all these good structures. And we got certificates from them, lots of certificates from them, but you don't get the space to be creative, to like put out whatever, you know. So I'm like, okay, I need to step out of the box. I need to be creative. I feel like I've known a lot. I need to put it out. And then, okay, I went out and I started searching, and I found it Kathleen Powell, beautiful, and that's found out 68 people. She got to 68 people. She introduced me to herself. She was also introduced me to the 68 Foundation. Let me know what they were all about. And we've been, okay, and that's how I landed on the role of a pastry chef in Australasia. Australasia has been wonderful. Australasia has been kind. I was welcomed at the airport from by Kathy. She took me. One thing I like about the 68 people is their relationship. They tend to relate more with the people. You know, it's and that's a key factor. You know, because the people are the brands. You know, when these people maximize themselves, and they tend to create like bigger organizations tomorrow, and they were like, oh, this whole journey started from someone who was like Kathy. So it's not all about the business. The business is more or less about the people. And Kathy has been like a great example to that, and I really appreciate her so much. So when I moved into the UK, one of the things that shocked me about the UK was the cold. You know, moving all the way from Dubai to UK, because in Dubai it was about it was having about 38, 40 degrees, and all of a sudden it was just like a shock to me when I came into the UK. It was about 17, 18 degrees, and I'm like, is it how it's gonna be?
Chucks,
So
you
now-
arrived in summer as well. You came in summer, not winter.
But that time it was that summertime, it was very cold. It was very cold to me. And I remember talking to Kathy about that. I was like, it's very cold. And she was like, we're not even in winter. That is going to get colder than this. I'm like, are you serious? So that was it. So I was one of the things I loved about working in Australasia. One of the specific things I love about there is you have this interaction with the board of directors. You have this great interaction with the managers. You have this great interaction with the GM. You know, when I got the job, he sent me a text message on LinkedIn directly and told me, congratulations, Chucks, we are hoping to meet. I was like, wow, that's one of the good things about, you know, he gets this direct relationship with them. When I come to work, most times when he's around, when I come to work, he's like, oh, Chucks, how are you? He shakes me, he hugs me, and I'm like, this is the GM talking to me. And I'm like, you know, that's a very good thing, because, you know, one thing about we chefs that we do all this job because, you know, a restaurant is always the front and the back. You know, the back people are we, the chefs who nobody sees. You know, we're the one who do all the jobs and nobody sees us. And the front people are like the waiter, the waitress, the managers, the receptionists or whatever. You know, but whenever I come to work, he just shakes me, he hugs me, he say, I'm happy to see you today. And it's like, you know, that's very encouraging, because we chefs, we don't really get all this, you know, we don't really get all this appreciation, and we like feel like we are back. So they create this relationship with me. I have direct communications with the executive chef. He's the up chef also. So we do all this menu planning from time to time. He brings me in, he sits me down. We have all these books, notes. We are like selecting menus, you know. That's the beautiful thing. So like, if I were to compare between working in an organization place that has like a massive structure like Hilton in Dubai, you know, you don't have all this interaction. Even with your executive chef, you don't even see him. Most of the times you don't even see him. Like, I remember correctly, once in a month, I get to see my executive chef, because he's always, you don't even get to see him because he delegates duties to different people and they send it to you, so you don't really get to have interactions. But here in Australasia, I get to see the boss, I get to talk to him, I get to interact with him. That's a very good thing coming from my own side. My dream role, one of the things that I would love to do full time is owning my own place. That's one of the things that every chef wants, to own their own place, because, you know, there's always a picture of what you want. There's always a picture of how you perceive a restaurant. There's a picture of how you want a customer to accept your dish that you pass out to the customer. So I would love to own my own place. I would love to own my own place, maybe anywhere in the world. I would love to own my own place, own like a very big coffee shop where people can come in, can have have a good time. You know, that's one of the dream role that I have. So that's that about me, and nothing more.
I'm sure we'll all be there, Chucks, when for the opening.
Yeah.
We'll all be there with our plates ready to get some really nice pastries.
You need to come in.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Chuck. That was really that was lovely to hear. It's great to hear about your journey and your background, the inspiration, your previous experiences, and what brought you, what made you so intrigued to work in the UK, and then what that process was like when you finally met our Kath. She's getting all shy. Just quickly, Chuck, I do have one more question for you before we go to the Q&A box and start answering the attendees' questions. If you're able to, can you pick, a single highlight of coming to the UK, working with 68 International and moving and working in the UK?
Okay, one of the major highlights I'm going to talk about coming into the UK is the passion to work. There's a different passion where I come from than working in the UK, because working in the UK I found out that people are not really interested working in the kitchen. People are not really interested, and I'm like, when the way I work, everybody at work is like, why is this guy working so much like this? Why is he working? I think it's probably because of where I come from, and also there's lots of personal development entangled with that. There's a lot of personal development, wanted to be the best in wherever you are, not letting down your standards and your what you know how to do. So people are not really passionate about working in the UK. People are not really they're not really interested in the kitchen. They treat it like, you need to treat a job like it's yours before you own your own job. So before you own your own company, you need to treat wherever you are like it's yours. I feel like people that are not really interested, I don't really know why. I don't really know why it's like that. I think I spoke to Kathy one time about it, and she was like, okay, I thought maybe it's because of the COVID. COVID was like a massive thing that happened in the UK and everything.
COVID had a huge impact on our hospitality, on our sector, and absolutely did we see lots of amazing chefs leave the industry. Also, lots of people went back to their home countries and didn't apply for leave to remain. So that saw a huge impact. But yeah, absolutely. Well, Chuck, thank you so much. So I'll hand back to Summer, and we can crack on with this ever-flowing question box.
Yeah, fab. Okay, so we've got quite a few. I'll scroll to the top because they started coming through quite a while ago. So the first one, I believe this looks like it's for Emma. There's a couple, unsurprisingly, that are for Emma around the legal side of things. If someone currently working with us on a student or graduate visa, if the employee is under 26, will they qualify for the 20% deduction?
Yeah, thanks, Summer. Thanks for the question, Shahal. Yeah, there's a few questions. I think most of them are on the legal side. So if I sort of whiz through as many as I can in the time that we've got, I think that's probably going to work best for everybody here. And then, as Summer's mentioned, we'll do an FAQ and pick up these unanswered questions, so you'll all get the answers at the end. Okay, so the question is, currently working with a student graduate visa, they're under 26, will they qualify for the 20% deduction? Yes, they qualify as a new entrant. Just worth bearing in mind that if they're currently working for you, if it is at all possible to get them onto a skilled worker visa now under the existing rules, that might be worth it, because then you'll benefit from the existing rules, and then they'll be in that category of existing skilled worker visa holders, which would be preferable than being a new visa holder come 4th of April. Might not be possible, but just worth thinking about in terms of strategy. Going through, so a question from AJ. If someone's on a PSW visa, that's a graduate visa, will they qualify for the new entry rate even if they're over the age of 26? Yes, they will. So various different ways of being a new entrant, coming from student or graduate or being under the age of 26, all mean that you're a new entrant. Question again from Shahal, so excuse me if I've pronounced that incorrectly. 29,000 threshold switch of visa. Does this apply to visa reapply? So yeah, that's the threshold if we're an existing skilled worker and we're looking to extend. Now we can't crystal ball too far into the future, so we don't know what might change in another 3 years' time and whether actually these thresholds might increase again. But at the moment, yeah, that's where we're at. So if we're extending, it's that threshold that you've referenced. Gail, you've just asked a question around basic salary. Does it include trunk and tips? No, I'm afraid it doesn't. I know there's some changes to legislation coming in, and one of my fantastic employment lawyer friends, Laura, is going to be providing some support on that around trunk and tips. But as it stands, and I think probably as it will stand, it doesn't come into basic salary, as frustrating as that is for everybody in the industry. Layla, question from you. You were just wanting to confirm whether new entrants are only the under 26. No, it's all new entrants. So it's that graduate and that student switches, they're all new entrants, and the deduction that I talked about applies to anybody who is a new entrant. There's a couple of questions, and in the FAQ, we'll probably go into this in a little bit more detail, but there's a couple of questions around 48-hour weeks or contracts that are over 37.5. And yes, the answer really is that the thresholds that I referenced are based on a 37.5-hour week, and any other working pattern will need to be prorated. So yeah, we'd need to do the calculation to work out exactly where the salary needs to hit. But you know, as a rule, look to the hourly rates in terms of the threshold that you need to be hitting for any other working pattern. Whizzing through, getting through quite a few, which is fantastic. Going down closer to the bottom, Laura, you've mentioned that your COS is still under review. You applied 3 weeks ago. Will that come under the old or new rules? Well, from what you've said, and I might be interpreting this incorrectly, from what you've said, it sounds as though you've applied for a certificate and that application is under review. Unfortunately, until that's granted, you can't assign it to your skilled worker, and it's only the point of assignment where we're going to be locking in the rules, as it were. So we'll just have to keep our fingers crossed for that COS to come through before the rules change. If it does, and you can get it assigned, then you've got the rules as they are now. If it doesn't, unfortunately, it's going to fall into the new rules. Another question from Layla. Once somebody's received their visa, how long do they have to enter the country? Well, when they get entry clearance, they have a valid from and a valid to date, and they have to enter within those 2 dates to enter as a skilled worker. Now, they used to only have 30 days, and it was a bit of a nightmare because that's not very long for everybody to pack up the bags and leave their jobs and often leave their family, you know, everything you imagine you have to do when you move country. But then during COVID, they extended that to 90 days because, you know, there was a complete restriction on international travel, and it was an absolute nightmare for everyone, and they haven't rowed back on that, which is really positive. So as it stands, it's still 90 days. But they just need to look at their valid from and their valid to days in their entry clearance, and that will tell them how long they've got to enter the United Kingdom. Question about fruit farms. I think we're thinking about seasonal workers there, which is a different category entirely. So everything we've been talking about today is all just around skilled workers. And we haven't touched at all on seasonal workers. We haven't, looked at the detail of youth mobility or the other various immigration categories that there are. So unless somebody's working on a fruit farm with a skilled worker visa, which I doubt it, then no, these don't apply to seasonal workers on fruit farms. Just having a look, I think we might have actually whizzed through most of them, because there's a couple from Anonymous which related to hours of work and 48-hour contracts, and we just talked about how that needs to be prorated in accordance with the working pattern. One from Melissa around a chef who's shortly applying for his wife's visa. No, there's no changes to dependents visas. And so, there's loads of changes within the statement of changes, but that's one of the areas that we haven't seen change. So that person should be absolutely fine. And then just a question around, is it possible that my team might be affected without me realising? For example, if they have a right to work in the UK via a share code, but you've not realised there's a restriction on their rates. I think you would know if somebody's on a skilled worker visa, because they should be sponsored by you under that visa. If somebody's giving you a share code, they could have any kind of visa, and those other categories, these salary thresholds don't necessarily apply. The only thing that I think you just need to bear in mind, this might be getting a little bit complicated, is that you might potentially have a skilled worker who's working for a different organisation. They're the sponsor and they're doing supplementary work with you, and you just need to be sure that they are continuing to work for their main sponsor, because if not, they can't do their supplementary work for you. But most of your visa holders, if they're not sponsored by you, they're not skilled workers, they've given you a share code that proves a different kind of visa status, it will say on there that they can work and there's no restrictions to that work. So a bit of a whistle stop. I'm going to hand back to Summer to pull everything together for me, and we can draw anything else out in an FAQ.
Thank you very much, Emma. That was like seeing like a game show, mastermind, going through all the answers in 2 minutes. Yeah, you did a fantastic job getting through them all. Thank you very much. Just to reiterate, if there's anything that we haven't covered in the questions, there are a couple, as we mentioned, that required a bit more of a detailed answer. We will answer those and we'll follow it up with an FAQ sheet to anyone that's registered on the webinar. I would love to say a massive, massive, massive thank you to our lovely panelists. Emma, thank you for all of your help and giving us, holding our hand through this very confusing transition for a lot of people. Kath, thank you very much for sharing the story of 68 International and your experience. And the birthday boy, Chucks, we can't forget Chucks. Thank you for sharing what your experience was like as well, coming to the UK. So thank you everyone for joining and for going through this with us in the past hour. We will follow up with an email with all of the points covered, and any questions that we didn't get to, we'll get those answered and sent out. So have a fabulous weekend on this fine Friday, and I'm sure we'll speak to you all soon.